today. My name is Tiana Baca, and I am the Community Education Programs Director here at Three Sisters Kitchen. I'm also a local farmer and seed steward and live and farm here in the South Valley of Albuquerque. For those of you who may not be familiar with Three Sisters Kitchen, we are a nonprofit community food space in the heart of downtown Albuquerque, and we use the power and love of local food to create economic opportunities, to improve community health, and to bring diverse communities together around the table. So while our space is still closed to the public for in-person dining at our cafe and shopping at our local food shop, we still have a variety of virtual classes and programs that are running right now. So to learn more about the work that we're doing, you can visit our website or check us out on social media. We're on Facebook and Instagram for Three Sisters Kitchen NM. And so with that, we'll go ahead and move into our cooking. So today we're going to be cooking up a Three Sisters salad, right? Our namesake, which is a salad using corn, beans, and squash. So before we delve into the actual cooking demo, I want to just take a moment to talk a little bit about the Three Sisters together. So the Three Sisters are actually a group of plants, right? Corn, beans, and squash that have been cultivated together by indigenous communities for centuries because of these supportive symbiotic relationships that these plants have together. So let's kind of talk through that a little bit. The corn plant is providing really this living trellis for the beans to grow upon, the scaffold. So instead of having to build additional infrastructure, we can utilize the corn and that scaffold that it already provides. The beans are able to readily fix nitrogen in the soil, so they're able to support the needs of corn. Corn uses quite a bit of nitrogen in its growth, and so providing for that corn plant while also ensuring that the soil is not depleted over time. And then the squash, and if you have seen squash growing, these big broad leaves that kind of reach out, and it serves as living mulch. So it's able to moderate soil temperature, mitigate water loss, right? And so these three plants together are able to achieve more, to cultivate a healthier environment than those plants growing individually on their own, right? And I also want to point out that the Three Sisters, grouping of corn, beans, and squash, is just one example of a broader milpa cultivation system developed by indigenous communities. So these larger milpa, or we can think of them as polyculture, companion planting systems that were developed and utilized and continue to be utilized by indigenous communities. These systems are incredibly important because they support biodiversity, they're fostering soil health, as well as being able to provide a diverse assortment of foods that provide the nutritional needs for communities, right? So this was and continues to be a system that has been in use all along the Camino from Mexico to Santa Fe, and is also a system that has kind of proliferated and moved into other spaces as well. But just a little bit of grounding as we think about what are the Three Sisters, and also thinking about our namesake here at Three Sisters, right? So with that being shared, let's go ahead and get cooking. The dish that we're making today, as I said, is a Three Sisters salad using corn, beans, and squash. And it's very versatile, and there's a lot of flexibility in this recipe. So I will be providing some kind of a foundation of generally these ratios. We're going to use kind of equal parts of corn, beans, and squash. But feel free to change it up based on what you like, your flavor preferences. Perhaps you want to add something else in here, maybe some bell peppers or something like that, jalapenos. Feel free. It's a choose your own adventure kind of salad, right? Also, if there's anything that doesn't feel good or jive with you in this dish, go ahead and omit that. I know cilantro can be something that folks either love or maybe not so much. So we'll offer some alternatives there as well. So let's go ahead and go over what we're going to need. And I'll show you here on the cooking cam. So we are going to be utilizing some cilantro and lime juice. If you don't have a lime, you can also use a lemon. That would be great. If you don't enjoy cilantro or don't have it, parsley is another great option. Or you can play with other herbs that are around and in season right now. We'll also be utilizing a little bit of oil. I have some avocado oil that I'm going to be putting on my salad, but really any vegetable oil you have. We'll have a little bit of salt for seasoning. Feel free to grab even other spices like pepper, paprika, chili. It's up to you if you want to add something else. We're going to be utilizing corn since it's not summer, not corn season. I'm using a canned corn. Canned or frozen works just fine. And then let me show you our squash. So when we talk about squash, there's actually a lot of versatility here as well. So today I am using a winter squash, and I went ahead and prepped this up just to make it super simple for us. But I have a winter squash that I cubed into these nice little bite-sized pieces. And I actually seasoned these with a little bit of the TSK spice shake. So this has some like red chili and sesame seeds and sumac. So you can add flavor even before you add these things to your salad. But if you want to, utilizing a winter squash, something like an acorn squash or butternut would be great. You can also use a summer squash like a zucchini. Any of those options work just fine. And then last but not least, you can see my pot of beans. So we need beans in our dish today as well. So I cooked up this pot of pinto beans, but you can certainly use canned beans as well. It's really up to you. And so that's what I'm using, and we'll talk through some of these ingredients a little bit more as we assemble our salad. But just know there's always versatility, right? You have canned something, you have a frozen something. It can be, this dish can be served warm or cold. I'm going to do it chilled today because it's getting pretty warm, even though it's spring. It's pretty hot, so I enjoy this as a chilled salad. But yeah, there's a lot of versatility. So those are our ingredients: our beans, squash, corn, cilantro, lime, and then some salt and a little bit of oil and any other herbs you wish. In terms of tools that we're going to need today, we will want cutting board and knife. We'll want to have some sort of bowl vessel to mix your salad into, a nice medium-sized bowl. As well as I often find it helpful to have some smaller bowls just to juice into handy. So that's it, pretty simple. We'll go ahead and get started. So because I have prepped most of the food today, right, the corn, got it out of can, that's great. The beans I've already cooked up, squash I prepared. I'm going to start by just getting the cilantro and lime ready, and then we'll assemble everything else. And I'll share some tips and tricks along the way. So let me bring you back to cooking cam so you can see me getting going. So cilantro is one of my favorite plants. I know that, yeah, it's sort of hit or miss. Folks have different feelings about this. So as I mentioned before, an alternative to cilantro could be using something like parsley, or maybe adding in chives or green onions. There's lots of different things you can be using. The amount of cilantro is also totally up to you. So as I said, I'm a big fan. So I'm going to use a pretty hefty amount. I imagine that when this is chopped, that's going to probably be a few tablespoons, maybe even up to a quarter of a cup. But I love cilantro, so this is how much I'm going with. I think, you know, a smaller amount, about a tablespoon, could be something if you're like, yeah, all right, and I'll throw that in there. So anywhere from like a tablespoon to a few tablespoons is kind of what we're aiming for. As I am chopping up my cilantro, I don't mind some of the tender stems that are further down by the leaves. I'm just going to trim off this more fibrous-y portion at the end, and then I'll chop this a little bit more. So a little quick knife safety tip. So for holding a knife, we can do a pinch grip, which is where we're actually pinching the blade and then our fingers wrap around the base of the knife. And this gives us a lot more control as we're cutting. With the other hand, we're going to do what's called like a claw or egg hand, where our knuckles are what's touching the knife or close to the knife, and our fingertips curl in so that they're protected, right? So by doing this, when my fingertips tucked in, I can't actually cut them. So it's a simple little tool to keep your fingers safe. So as I'm slicing the cilantro, chopping this up, you'll notice I just removed the stems that are more fibrous-y. This other part of the stem I'm going to use because it's pretty tender. And what I like to do is kind of bunch this up, and then I'm going to come through and just cut perpendicular, right? And you can see I'm doing that pinch grip and that egg hold just to keep my fingers safe. I always move more slowly as I get to the end. So that's a rough chop. I can even just turn my cutting board and come the other direction to make it super simple, right? If you ever have like bits left on your knife, and especially if you're working with kiddos, feel free to just get a spoon or a fork, and you can use that to scrape it off. Keep your fingers nice and safe. So I have a wonderful, just rough chop on my parsley or on my cilantro. You may be using parsley or something. I'm just going to set this aside in a smaller bowl so I have it ready. And the stems, you know, you can save your stems of any herbs that you're using and toss that into a pot to make some broth with, right? So I tend to save all of my scraps, whether it's herbs or onion skins, and I save that to make broth later on. Okay, so I have my cilantro ready. The next piece I'm going to get going is my lime. And again, if you don't have a lime, but you have a lemon, that could be great. There's a few options here. One, you could zest this lime, and so get some of the wonderful oils from the skin itself. I'm just going to be juicing this today. And so I'm going to cut that right in half and then go ahead and squeeze. We'll see how this does. Sometimes having a spoon or a juicer, just a way to help get the juice out of there. And for the amount that we're making today, like I said, we're doing equal parts of corned beans and squash. And it's about 1 cup of each. And so I will probably end up using all of the juice from this lime, but it's really up to you. So as we go along, it's really a taste it, find what you enjoy. You can always add more. You can't really, you know, take things back. So add what tastes good, sample it along the way, tweak it, modify it to make it delectable to you. Lime is a little on the drier side, gotten a little older, still all right. You can see I probably have like 1 or 2 tablespoons of juice in there. All right. So now that those are prepped, again, my cilantro, my lime juice, I'm going to make some space and bring over my other ingredients so I can assemble. Let's see, let's go ahead and get started with the corn. So today I mentioned that I'm using canned corn. It's not corn season, nothing growing outside for me. You can use something that's canned, you can use a frozen. There's lots of options. If you are using canned corn, right, there's going to be a lot of liquid. And so I'm going to strain this off. So I didn't mention having a strainer. This is totally optional, right? You can pour it through here. You can also use a spoon at the edge of the can to pour that liquid out. But I'll just go ahead and use my strainer because I have it. Get that excess liquid out. And because I'm doing a chilled salad, this is going to be ready for me to put right into my dish. Let's see. I'm going to use my measuring cup is hidden. So I'm just going to use this kind of as a gauge. So my 1 cup measure. Everything, as I mentioned, is it's a rough amount. So feel free to add as much as you want, as little as you want of the thing. If you have, like this can of corn is 15 ounces, so that's almost 2 cups. You could just double the amount of corn. You could double the whole recipe. If you have something that you are planning to use the corn elsewhere, feel free to save it and set it aside. For the sake of right now, I will bring you back to my cooking cam. And I'm just going to go ahead and measure out a cup. Because that's what I said we were doing. I'll just show you that. But again, I have enough corn here that I could actually double this recipe to feed some more folks. So about 1 cup. I'm going to go ahead and add that in. And then let's do the same with the squash. So again, I mentioned that there's different options for squash. You can use a summer squash, you can use a winter squash. You can buy like frozen cubes of squash and roast those up yourself. Lots of different options. So find what feels good. I like these cubes. You could also do some wedges. Really, like I said, choose your own adventure. I went ahead and have already actually seasoned these. I mentioned I put some TSK spice shake on them. So that's a little bit of red chili. There's some sesame, sumac, and this beautiful spice blend that we already have. And I'll probably use this for another meal later, but I have measured out my 1 cup and I'll add that into my salad. Go ahead and give this a stir. It's really great to see all those bright oranges and yellows, especially as we are coming in spring, right? Thinking about all those colors, all that newness. And I'm going to go ahead and measure out my beans. Again, the beans that I have here, I went ahead and I cooked these up. So I started with dry beans, cooked up my pot of beans. I did add some flavorings. So these have some onion and garlic and a little bit of cumin and pepper, like chili pepper. But you don't need that. It's really up to you. You can use canned beans, right? That makes it super simple. Really up to you. But the nice thing about cooking them yourself is that does give you a little bit more flexibility with what flavors or what types of beans you want to be using. It's also nice. I like to just have that pot of beans cooked up for the week, right? So I'm making this dish, but now I also have food for tacos or to go with the enchiladas we made before. So we'll go ahead and add my beans here. Give this another mix. If you were using like black beans or something, you'd really get some additional contrast with all those colors. So I have my corn, beans, and squash in my bowl. I'm now going to go ahead and start adding my cilantro. And this is the place where, even though I chop them up, I'm planning to use it all, but I can add it slowly as I go to really get a sense of what do I actually want. And I will probably just keep on adding this because it looks delicious to me. And beautiful, right? Like adding that green in there, we get those greens, those yellows, the color of the beans. And each of these colors corresponds to different nutrients and compounds within the food itself. So it's also adding, right, like adding to the nutritional complexity in our own bodies. So at this point, I have my corn, my beans, my squash, my cilantro, and now for the dressing, if you will, that's what the lime juice and that little bit of oil and salt is. So instead of mixing together a dressing as we go, we can actually just add them as individual components. So I'm going to start by adding about half of my lime juice. And I'm also going to add just a drizzle of some avocado oil and a pinch of salt. Then I'll stir this up and taste it and see if I want to add some more, right? I can always add more. So I just sort of work as I go. I'll get myself another little spoon. Taste that. And that's tasting pretty good, but I do want a little bit more citrus in mine. So I'm going to go ahead and add the rest of my lime juice. And I think that is going to be perfect. I'll taste one more time. That is super lovely. So here is our very simple Three Sisters salad. And I can't remember if I already mentioned to you all, this, as I mentioned, that this can be served either warm or cold. There's a lot of flexibility, but when it is cold, you can refrigerate this and really let those flavors meld. And so kind of letting it sit for a few hours. So if you prep this in the middle of the day, have it for dinner, or even save it overnight, all of those flavors are really going to blend together in a deeper way and just add so much more nuance. So this is a dish that definitely keeps getting more delicious over the next few days. It stores well in the fridge for 3 or 4 days. So make up as much as you like. You know that you can store it. And thanks so much for cooking with us and for sharing in this